the people, by the people. For the culture.
Peace, peace, peace. Jumbo, welcome to the Vital Hoops podcast. Right here on Black Power Media Reloaded. My name is Fernando Cardenas, aka International XB. I am your host. This is episode 75. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe. Also, don't forget our podcast is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. For those of you who don't have time to be watching on YouTube, maybe you working out or you cleaning the house or whatever it is that you're doing and you want to listen to the Vital Hoops podcast, please do so. All right, our guest today is a brother and comrade. He's my co-host at Habana Negra, in which we speak about everything related to Cuba and the rest of the African diaspora from a Pan-Africanist perspective. He's also a member of the fourth International Pan-Africanist Movement, which is, I believe, the biggest Spanish-speaking Pan-Africanist organization today. And he's located in Toronto, Canada. He is my Afro-Cuban brother, Vladimir Michel Gonzalez. Vlad, welcome back to the Vital Hoops podcast, my brother. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, brother.
Thank you, man. Listen, this is the third time, man. Third time we have you out here. So you official Vital Hoops.
It's an honor.
Yeah,
It's
thank
it's
you,
a great
man.
honor. I enjoy a lot having these conversations with you. We have it online and offline all the time.
That's right. That's
So
right.
it's always good, man.
No doubt, man. No doubt. I appreciate you taking the time again, man. So listen, so you just came back from Cuba. You're lucky to be able to go quite often. So that's a great thing, man. I miss it, man. I haven't been back in a little while now. I gotta go back as soon as possible, man. But how was it, man? Overall, how was it, man? How was it, seeing the family and everything, and how are things going back home?
It's always good to be back, man. It's always good to be back. For me, I like you say, I'm very lucky that I'm able to go back every so often, like pretty often, and hang out with family and friends, and and catch up and see reality in real time, and
Yeah,
be there,
for
and I
sure.
think it is important, because if we look at social media, there's a lot of information on social media, and also it doesn't always match the reality on the ground,
Mm,
So I think I'm blessed in that sense that I can go and see and be with the people and see how people are and what people are experiencing, and compare that to what social media is telling us, on
absolutely.
one way or another.
Yeah, yeah,
So
no
yeah,
doubt.
in that sense, I'm very lucky. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
good to
yeah.
be back. Always good to be back.
Always, man. I know it is. Um, so listen, yeah, today we're gonna get a little into we want to speak about, because there's a lot of opinions when it comes to Cuba. There's obviously two sides, but we want to speak about, the political consciousness amongst the people in Cuba, right, on the island. Because we're both you and I are concerned, a little bit concerned with everything that's going on. Before we start, those of you who are regular Vital Hoops, listeners or watchers, you already know what time it is, but just in case there's some new listeners, I want to make sure you all understand before we start this conversation that, Vlad and I are Pan-Africanists. We're both Cuban, proud Afro-Cuban Pan-Africanists, but we are obviously anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, and anti-colonialist, obviously, as we're true, Pan-Africanists. So yeah. Let's put that up front, you know. But yeah, so as far as Cuba and everything that's going on right now, obviously we know that we're at an all-time, I wouldn't say all-time, but depending when how far back we're going, but we are in very difficult times, on the island. People are truly having a tough time for as far as basic needs and everything. The island is deteriorating. Things are difficult, for everyday people. You know, one of our main concern that we always talk about, like you said, is the consciousness, right? The political consciousness of our people. Many people that I would call maybe Pan-Africanists, etc., outside of Cuba tend to believe that our people have a strong political consciousness, right? But I don't think that's the case, right? I think throughout the years and the tough times and a lot of mistakes and a lot of things that the people have had to endure, they've pretty much lost that political consciousness. And I think right now we are pretty much at an all-time low as far as political consciousness amongst the people, which is not what a lot of people would expect from the outside, looking at Cuba as like a quote unquote revolutionary country. And how do you see the whole thing, man?
The way I see it is, like in the global context, Cuba is a very important place right now, right? It's been for quite some time, based on the fact that Cuba had a revolution and defeated the Western economic system, like removed that Western influence in Cuba in that sense, so they couldn't use Cuba the way they were using it
Hmm.
uh, after 1959. So that means that we Cubans are at war with the West, right? So we need to understand that. So
Sure.
part of the war is a psychological war, right? And also economical war and all of that, right? We understand that Cuba is blockaded and it's very hard for the island to have even the basic needs at
Basic
some
needs,
time,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like right now, right? So at this time, we have to see what happened with COVID. It's a global crisis, and whenever we have a global crisis, the countries that are have the least resources or the least access to resources are the people who will suffer the most.
Yeah,
And that will affect also the consciousness and how people will see the struggle.
yeah,
And if we mention the psychological warfare, and we have been Cubans have been under relentless psychological warfare for a long time, but that has increased in my view since we have had access to internet and social media like Facebook,
yeah,
specifically Facebook, you know, and you see people having access to propaganda and a lot of misinformation, and that has affected the political consciousness of the people. I think people are being politically educated, but not properly politically educated. People have, in essence, I think that the thought of the people in political terms have gone to the right and and you see people having talking points of the far right. You see, and you see like racialized people, black people having those talking points,
yeah,
and that is the effect that the social media has had in the population. Not
yeah,
only you see like people that are our age, but you even see older people, people that are older than our generation, having those thoughts and
yeah,
which is very worrisome because
yeah,
those people had more time to be able to analyze and understand the political education that's how has always been taught in the on the island, right? So I think it's very worrisome to me to see that. That's not to say that is the case of everybody. Of course, you will
no,
see people who are very well educated and they understand everything from the global perspective, But I think the number of people who are being miseducated is increasing significantly. And
for sure.
I can just give you an example, like talking to people whenever and I'm talking, specifically black people, right?
Of course.
Which in Cuba, most people are black anyways. So talking to black people, let's say the name Donald Trump or Elon Musk comes along, like, and then you don't see a negative reaction on their faces, like say, let's say, the history of Congo in relation to Belgium, right? And you say, and then if I mention to you the name of Leopold the second, or whatever his name is, the king, that king that
Yeah, Leopold.
killed so many people there, the reaction on your face, I can see how you perceive that person, and it's not the same thing when you talk about those people who are not necessarily haven't necessarily done that so far, but like if given the chance, they would do it,
Of
or
course.
are our enemies, like clearly are our enemies. So I'm telling you, the name of our enemy comes along, and I don't see a negative reaction in you. That's the least. And many times I see a positive reaction, like they see
Mm.
those figures as positive figures in the world scheme, and that is very worrisome to me.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's speaking to everyday people, like, regular brothers and sisters. And no, I agree, man. I've encountered a lot of similar situation, including with some of my friends, some of my childhood friends, etc., from back in Cuba. But I think, there's a few factors within that. There's part of it is, I think I agree with you, the propaganda that they're getting from, social media, etc. Now that internet is being more accessible, in Cuba. I think a lot of it is like also, like you said, the miseducation, because there's all this negative propaganda coming in and miseducation. And I mean, it's similar here in the West, but since in Cuba we haven't had internet for so long, people really don't know how to analyze a piece of information coming from the internet and be like, nah, this is bullshit, or this is, straight up propaganda, or this is, what I'm saying? So there's definitely that part. But there's also the living experience, meaning like the necessity, which leads to that. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're in need of certain basic things, you know what I'm saying? And then you turn on social media and it makes it seem like everybody got everything overseas or whatever. So when you put those things together, plus the aspect of, everyday people, they've never been outside of the islands. They've never left the island, right? So the lack of traveling and seeing that, struggle is everywhere. People go through difficult times in every country on earth, thinking that when you leave Cuba, everything is smooth. You know what I'm saying? Everything is smooth sailing outside. Like we're just having a difficult time over here. So that's kind of a mentality, on the island as well. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Just
I one of the things I try to do whenever I talk to people, is to present the issue as a global issue, because
yeah,
that's one of the things that have affected us the most, like, and also it's part of the propaganda, like the propaganda that comes from the West and from the Cuban community, that are opposed to the Cuban government, is that you guys are in a really bad situation while the world is flourishing. The world is great, everybody's
yeah,
moving forward, but you guys are stuck there. So
yeah,
it's only you guys who need to come out of that situation, and then everything will be fine.
yeah,
And that's what many people believe and understand in Cuba, and
yeah,
not only in Cuba. I think it's common to the south of the globe. Everywhere else, in the north, is going to be fine, because that's the
yeah.
propaganda of the West, in order to attract people and have cheap labor.
Yeah, like
But in
come over
Cuba,
here. There's opportunities over here.
yes,
You
yes.
just got to
But in
work
Cuba,
hard.
it's very, very specific, because we have been blocked from the rest of the world for so long, in a very peculiar way, in a very specific way, right? So I always try to talk to people in terms of global, like I give examples of how this economic situation we have in the globe right now is affecting here in Toronto, right? I give example of how homelessness has increased, how safety on the streets, it's worse right now, and all of that. Of course, there's a big difference, right? There's a big difference in material condition between Cuba and Canada, of course. But the point is to see the crisis as a global crisis, because I think it is very important to see as a global crisis, because if you think that you are the one having the problem, whenever you remove whatever you think the problem is, you will be in the same situation and not knowing what to do if you don't connect the dots with the rest of the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's for us that live outside of Cuba. I think it's important to make those connections.
Yeah.
to people down there, right?
Yeah, no doubt, man. And so, this kind of political understanding, which is every time moving more to the right, you know what I'm saying, is also causing problems within the island as far as the people and the authorities, right? So this
Hmm.
is also part of why we're seeing so much problems with the encounters, bad encounters with police, for example. You know what I'm saying? Because that's another one. People think police, not in Cuba, it's a revolutionary state, but not police in Cuba. We're having a lot of problems with the police, with police
Yeah,
encounters, especially us, black folks. We always have. But now, people want to voice their opinion, which may or may not be correct, but either way, they want to speak up and they want to say something, and now they're having trouble with the police,
hmm,
right? They're getting beat up, they're getting sent in jail. There's a lot of people, including people that I know that are locked up because of, just wanting to speak up about the situation. Like I said, when you're going through hard times and you feel like you're not being treated right,
yeah,
you want to say something, it's wrong for the police to beat you up and lock you up. You know what I'm saying? And that's happening a lot
yeah,
right now, unfortunately. And the island is deteriorating, unfortunately, and a lot of, I'm from the city, but I've heard a lot that when things are going bad in the city, outside of the city is even worse, but
yeah,
speaking as far as the city where, you can see the buildings. Thankfully, people have their homes, and most people have their homes, and most people don't have to pay rent, but they're having trouble, fixing their homes. You gotta take care of your home. It's good to have a home, but at some point you gotta do some maintenance, and
yeah.
if you don't have the ability to do some maintenance in your house, then
No, even in the city, man, even in the city, you can see a lot of deterioration.
yeah.
It doesn't look good at all. It
Mm.
doesn't look good at all. And like you say, things are not going well for the people. And then it doesn't help that when the people, like rightfully so, like asking questions or demanding explanation from the people in charge, that they're not treated well. That
Yeah.
doesn't help at all. So that also adds to the problem we're having of people then
Yeah.
paying attention to other people giving you information that is contrary to the one the government might be doing or
Absolutely.
providing, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't help that when people come to you asking for questions, instead of you sitting down with the people or trying to address that in a proper way, you mistreat the people. That doesn't help at all.
Yeah, you get violent. They get violent real quick now. So, and that, like you said, that keeps pushing people to the right. That keeps pushing people to a materialistic, Western ideology. So that's where we're at, man. We're in tough times. I don't know where do we go from here? Because the situation right now is tight. It's been tight. It's been tight for a couple of years. I think after COVID, it never really went back to quote unquote normal. During COVID, it got worse, and it's been kind of on the decline, the situation. During the Obama years, that had its effect also in Cuba, meaning that in Cuba, for those of you who don't know, tourism pretty much is a place where people that work there, they kind of do better than other people. So during the Obama years, there was a little more tourism in Cuba. And so, certain people saw a little bit of progress or whatever, financial progress, that is. But the way things are going today, and with Trump going back, because we recently, Joe Biden took Cuba off the terrorist list, right? Recently. Obviously, we know why he's doing it and everything right before he leaves. And we know that Trump is going to put him right back in, right?
Yeah.
Trump is going to put him right back in. But
When I heard that, I was more upset than anything else because, it's like a game, it's
yeah,
like
it's a joke.
it's like a game, like clearly he did it, to make it look good on him. You see, I'm a good guy.
Yeah,
Listen,
of
guys, I'm a
course.
good guy. I'm going to remove you from the list of
Yeah.
terrorist governments that support terrorist organizations or whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
when
yeah.
the U.S. government is the main terrorist in the world. Yeah, but
It's crazy.
then you do it like to have Cuba off the list for maybe a week. Come
Right.
on.
Right. Like you said, it's a joke. I want to talk about last year, in December, there was a conference in Cuba for the decade for people of African descent called Equality, Equity, and Social Justice, right? So they held it in Cuba. Um, it was a lot of countries involved. People from many different countries were there. Recently, I mean not recently, but we've had on our show on Habana Negra, we've had one of our comrades, Roberto Zurbano, one of the most important, black revolutionaries in Cuba today. He spoke on our show and, about everything that's been going on as far as black people in Cuba and the struggle for anti-racism and everything. And unfortunately, he wasn't invited to this conference. When somebody like that is not invited, to me, that shows that, it's kind of a joke. There's other people like Norberto Mesa, who's also a brother that, an elder that needs to be, that's been speaking about everything related to Afro descendants in Cuba and who definitely had his place there, who should have been formally invited.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing people over there in the conference that have, quote unquote Afro or black businesses and things like that in Cuba, that those people were invited, but I'm not seeing a lot of the people that should be there as far as Cuba, you know. From the other countries, I think they invited a few Pan-Africanist organizations and everything, which is great, but unfortunately, there were quite a few people missing from Cuba. And unfortunately, that tends to happen. That tends to happen a lot when we're talking about black issues in Cuba.
Yeah, man. It's interesting, but I don't know how people gonna take this, but I think the same way you see how in the US, they have this black people invited to the White House and businesses doing collaborations with people that are fighting for black liberation. And if you listen to people who really have an understanding on this, they will make you see how all of that is fake and it's fake liberation. It is not real.
Yeah.
The same thing is happening in Cuba, whether we like it or not.
Mm.
Whether we like it or not. So we have this conference for the International Decade for People of
People of
African
African
Descent,
descent.
right? So we have this conference, and like you say, they don't have Roberto Zurbano right there, a person who has been very vocal and is part of the institutions of the government, right? So he was the director of Casa de las Americas. He's with the system. He's not an enemy, right? How come you don't have this person in this conference? How come you don't have, like you say, Norberto Mesa, a person who has been doing activism for so long, and a person who's not enemy of the Cuban Revolution either, So that will tell you that this is a joke, this is not serious. So I saw it on TV. I was there when that was going on, and I saw a conference, and I saw the president, Diaz-Canel. He met with the delegates, and there was a conference, and it looked nice. But I would like to see, I would like to hear what people that were there, what they think, like how, like, I don't know, somehow most of these people, especially the people from the diaspora, I would say, especially the people from the United States, you wouldn't see right any person, non-black person, being the head of a organization dealing with the black issues in your country, right? I don't care if it's the president, I don't care who it is. This is not to disrespect anybody, it's just that's not how it goes. It's like me being at the head of a feminist organization that just doesn't go,
Mm.
right? And then, again, I would like to talk to someone who was there, but as he was talking about the issues in Cuba, he even gave a version of the I have a black friend, my best friend is black, talking.
President Diaz-Canel did that.
Yeah,
Uh,
right? So yeah, well, I was in school, and my friends, I have black friends, kind of thing, something like that. So that I'm not saying with this that there's ill intention, but certainly there is not a clear understanding of what the issue is.
yeah, a
So
lack
how
of
can you be at the
understanding. Yeah.
head of an organization dealing with an issue that you don't have a clear understanding of what the issue is when you're coming with a I have a black friend kind of thing
Yeah.
still, right? So to
Yeah,
say the least, it's now the problem is not well understood, to say the least,
yeah,
right?
of course.
It could be like you're playing games.
No, yeah, I've spoken about this a lot on this podcast, the whole thing about, black folks in Cuba and in Latin America in general, and white folks in Latin America. And I've heard, people say like, oh, it's not the same thing. Like, yeah, like in Cuba, it's different with black people. No, white people are white people. You know what I'm saying? Whether we're in Cuba, in the Dominican Republic, in wherever we're at, they have their privileges. You know what I'm saying? And we African people are African people. You know what I'm saying? So we have to understand that, the racism, yeah, has certain different forms of manifestation depending on where you at. But at the end of the day, it's there. You know what I'm saying? The colorism is just as strong. The racism in general is there. It's just, so you can't come from somewhere else, especially as a Pan-Africanist, you know, or as a proud African and think, oh no, it's cool when white folks say these kinds of things over here because it's different over here. It's not. Let me tell you, let me tell you right now, it's not different. Think about what you would do back home or what you would let wherever you're from, what you would let your people back home. That's why when I speak of like, yo, when you go into somewhere, if somebody came to the United States, right? And I understand that the United States is different because we're talking about a huge empire. But you have to still be able to you have to understand the idea, right? If everything you do is linked to the government, and not linked to grassroots organizations, there's gonna be something there that's not, you know what I'm saying? That's disconnected, to the grassroots, to the people. And so that's what happens a lot. When a lot of people go do work in Cuba, a lot of times they're not connected to the real grassroots. And the grassroots that they think that they're connected to is grassroots that's connected to the government. But let me tell you that there's a bunch of people that are doing work that are not connected to the government. Even, for example, someone like Roberto Surbano, that you say that, he is connected to the government, but the work that he does, he works with a lot of, organizations that are not connected to the government.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And that's where he does most of his important work, actually. You know what I'm saying? So, you have to take that into consideration. Um,
To
and
be fair,
understand.
I can understand how can someone coming from from the US or Canada, like, and you go to a place like Cuba, and you coming from the experience of the North, like how even though segregation is not legal in the US, people still live very segregated. You have
Yeah.
the black communities and the white communities, and people don't necessarily mingle that much, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you go to a place like Cuba, wherever you go, you see all kinds of people, right?
Mm.
And you see people having relationships with each other, and having
Yeah.
connections with each other. It's easy to think that there is no racial issue, there is no racial hierarchy or whatever, but it's way deeper than that. You need to, the same way when we go to a new place, we need to get well informed, by someone who really understands the situation. The same thing happens in Cuba, because the way I say it is, you may see something that looks like an integration, but in my view, it's not a real integration, because for it to be a real integration, we need to have that conversation that we haven't had. Okay, so your people did this to my people, and my people are still suffering for this, specifically to black people, okay? Not to poor people, not to specifically to black people. That conversation hasn't happened in Cuba. So how can we have a conversation when I am still suffering from issues of the past that are still here, and
Yeah.
not only we're not having that conversation, but whenever someone has tried to have that conversation, even politely, those people have been pushed to the side or forced to exile, right?
They've been in trouble. Yeah.
They've been in trouble. So that's a false integration. And not to say that in Cuba nobody knows our African history, right? And it's not in the curriculum in the schools. We don't know anything. We don't learn anything about African. Same as the people in the U.S. or everywhere else. We think our history started in slavery, and then some white person came in and gave us freedom, and then that's when we started to be people. That's what we understand,
Mhm.
right? If any other place in the world, Cuba was the place where all of that could have been taught because they control all the school system, they control everything, so they control everything that we learn. So how
Yeah.
come we are praising European history?
Hmm.
How come everybody knows who Napoleon Bonaparte is and nobody knows who Toussaint Louverture is in Cuba, right? That doesn't make sense.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. We have to look at it from the education that's being taught to our children in Cuba, right?
Yeah.
The African history is simply not there. One thing that was pushed in this conference as well, and that's been pushed for a long time, I know because, prior COVID, when I was still living in Cuba, uh, and doing work with my comrades over there, we know they've been pushing this agenda for years, the agenda of color cubano,
Mm.
el ajiaco and all of this, which means the Cuban color. So they make it say like, there's no color in Cuba, we're all Cubans.
Colorblind. It's a
Right.
version of the colorblind thing.
Yeah, it's a version of that shit of being, colorblind. So, and basically, our people, like everywhere else, are at the bottom, have the most difficult situations. And so we have to call it what it is, man. You know what I'm saying? We have to call it what it is. But the difficult part, yeah, is like I said, like, our children not getting the education and even within, not just like pre-colonial, but even more recent education, the Afro-Cubans and the struggle within whether the Partido Independiente de Color, even our main leaders within the revolution that we fought against Spain, the Quintín Banderas and all those people, they don't have the light shined on them the way they should. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? So yeah, this is something that is a real problem, as a real problem for our people. And so when obviously with this whole color cubano thing, you can imagine when we preach or when we speak about race first, the concept of race first, you know, I would encourage anybody who's a Pan-Africanist next time you go to Cuba to talk to them about that. See what they think about race first, which I believe is a key piece to our liberation, as African people. Um, the point I guess that we're trying to make is that, there's a lot of work in Cuba to be done, just like everywhere else. We always see things from a global perspective, you know, me and you, like you said, we always have these conversations and we talk about the importance of ideology, and we have to work on that. Our people in Cuba right now, contrary to maybe popular belief, because I've heard people say that now in Cuba, people know why times are hard. They understand that, times are hard because the United States, and the embargo and this and that, that's not the reality of the masses. The reality of the masses don't understand why times are hard and they're fed up and they're tired and they're, you
You
know,
can see regular everyday people. You talk to everyday people, they have been integrated the lie
mm,
that the embargo is not real.
mm.
Because that's what the propaganda
That's what the
says, right?
propaganda, yeah,
And you will see a lot of people saying that the blockade is not real, that is something made up by the government to repress the people. So we're in trouble. We're in trouble. Like everywhere else, people are denying reality, right? But it's not different from for us. It's people are not people. We're in trouble in that sense too.
mm. Absolutely, man. Hey, man, always good talking to you, my brother. Uh,
Likewise.
for sure, man. Before you go, man, if you can give us a book recommendation, man.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man. I've been coming back to well, this is the Spanish version of it, Los Jacobinos Negros, is the
Yes,
Black Jacobins.
like C.L.R. James.
Yeah, C.L.R. James, it's so from this book, I get a lot of insights into comprehending even the situation in Cuba and how Cuba in the globe, going back to understanding things from the global perspective, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So understanding what Haiti or Haiti did, to liberate itself from the colonial and imperialist powers, and
absolutely.
all they have gone through because they dared to be free, right? So that this book gave me a lot of insights into the situation in Cuba as well, because
Mm,
essentially we did the same thing, right? We broke with the imperialist and capitalist powers, and
yes,
paying for that right now, right? And we're fighting against that. So yeah, again, going back to the point of seeing things from a global perspective and see how the struggle is global. I think this book I think it's very important to understand.
Absolutely, man. And shout out to our brothers and sisters from Haiti, man. Going
Sure.
heavy. It's heavy what's going on down there. What's always been going on ever since, our people liberated themselves down there. Our ancestors did the work, and they made it the first Black Republic. We've always, been under attack everywhere, but specifically in Haiti, so as African people, period, but definitely as Pan-Africanists, we always have to keep our eye on what's going on in Haiti, and
Sure.
support that, be in solidarity with that, as well as the Sahel states right now, you know. But thank you, man. Thank you for that book recommendation. I'm gonna put your info down in the description. Everybody check you out on IG.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. And also make sure those of you that understand Spanish, make sure you check us out on Habana Negra. We have a very special episode in the works. We've had some technical difficulties with that one. We already shot the episode, but we've had some technical difficulties as far as the footage. But
Yeah. It's a very important one. I like it a lot. It's with Norberto Mesa. We've mentioned his name a couple times here on this
yeah,
show, and it's a person that is very dear to us in regards to the
absolutely.
struggle against racism in Cuba.
Yeah.
The person who's been on fighting for many years, and it's a wonderful person and a great elder.
Great comrade, elder, for sure, man. Now that Cuba has been approved by BRICS, we'll see, man. Hopefully, that means something positive. I don't know, man. We'll see. We'll
How do
see.
you see that actually? So, how do you see that?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't know, man. We're gonna have to wait and see. It should mean some type of betterment. Like I mean, I think it's positive for BRICS, obviously, but I'm worried about the people underground in Cuba. Hopefully that will bring something positive to the people.
Yeah.
Obviously politically for BRICS it's positive. So I'm
For
hoping it
me, for
brings something.
me, like you say, the hope I have is that it will bring some economical
Yeah, relief.
relief for the people, and especially in this 4 years coming, right, with
Yeah.
Donald Trump in the White House.
Yeah,
Hopefully, my hope is that that will bring some economic relief for the people, for the everyday people. Of course, that's why I welcome that news, right?
no doubt.
But again, there's still a lot of the struggle continues. That's not
Always.
a
Oh,
revolutionary bloc. That's not
no.
a Pan-Africanist
Yeah.
bloc in any sense. But as long as it brings some relief for the people, I think I will be very happy with that.
Same. I hope so, man. All right, comrade. And you already know, man. We stay in touch as always, and I appreciate you rocking with me over here on Black Power Media, man. Vital Hoops Podcast.
Thank you for having me again, man. Thank you for having me.
No doubt.
It's always a pleasure, man.
Always, man.
It's always good to have this conversation with you.
Always, man. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
All right, all right. That was episode number 75. Shout out to my brother Vlad. Thank you for supporting the Vital Hoops Podcast. Please make sure you share this one. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, make sure you share it with your peoples. Make sure you check out Habana Negra. The link is down in the description. Follow Vlad on Instagram and support the show however you can. Everything is down in the description as well. Now, I know the month of January is coming to an end. So this is when, people were all hyped up about the new year. And now for certain people, the hype is starting to go down. Make sure you remember your goals. Make sure you keep your health up. Your goals, whether they're, whatever, fitness goals, health goals, community goals, whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Keep your head up. The struggle continues. Vital Hoops is for the people, by the people, for the culture. Uhuru.